Therapy is just paying someone to listen to you complain.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. That is a direct quote from the notes we're doing a deep dive into today.
It is definitely a strong way to start.
Right. But we were starting there because, honestly, it just perfectly captures the modern skepticism that, so many people harbor around mental health care.
Yeah, I mean, it is a brutally honest assessment of how a lot of people view the whole industry.
Totally.
Like, if your exposure to therapy just comes from pop culture portrayals or even just hearing frustrated secondhand accounts from friends, it absolutely looks like a one-sided venting session.
Oh, for sure. You just picture this transaction where, I don't know, someone purchases 50 minutes of nodding.
Right. Nodding, and maybe like some intense note-taking.
Exactly. You sit on a couch, you stare at a ceiling fan, and you just list off everything your boss did wrong that week, and then someone asks you how it makes you feel.
Which is not actually what's happening.
Right. And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We're looking at a very specific stack of sources today.
Yeah, we've got clinical directory data, intake guidelines, and service overviews.
Right, for a specific practice called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
CHC, right?
And we're going to look at how their structural model, and frankly, their whole clinical philosophy, offers a completely different reality from that whole complaining stereotype.
Well, because if you don't understand the actual utility of the process, the logistics of how to get it, they just do not matter.
Right, why would you seek out something you think is useless?
Exactly. We have to start by dismantling that initial emotional barrier for the listener.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the intake guidelines we have for CHC, they don't just, politely disagree with the complaining myth.
No, they completely reject it.
They fundamentally redefine the whole objective. The text explicitly states that their approach is about figuring out why you keep ending up in the same patterns.
The patterns, yes, that is crucial.
And it focuses on learning to respond instead of react. It
Yeah.
talks about dealing with the baggage you've carried for years.
Right, the stuff you just drag around every day.
Yeah. And ultimately, they define their work as, and I love this phrasing, building a toolkit for your life with a trained professional.
A toolkit.
Right.
That concept completely shifts the dynamic, it moves it from passive to active.
Yeah, it really does.
Mm.
To put it in perspective, treating therapy as just complaining is like staring at a leaky pipe in your basement and just whining to a plumber about all the water damage.
Right, just standing there pointing at the puddle.
Exactly. Just
Yeah.
saying, look at this mess. It's so annoying. But what CHC is offering, this toolkit, is the plumber actually handing you a wrench.
Teaching you how to use it.
Right. Teaching you how to turn off the water main and, figuring out why the pipe's froze in the first place so it doesn't happen again next winter.
That is a perfect way to look at it because what's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of those patterns mentioned in the text.
The repeating patterns.
Yeah, like reacting, which is what most of us do when we are stressed out, is a reflex.
Oh, absolutely.
It is an automatic, unthinking survival mechanism. If we stick to your plumbing analogy, reacting is just, throwing a towel on the leak every single day.
I'm just hoping it stops.
Right. It
Yeah.
is the exact same faulty sequence every time a specific trigger happens. And that reflex is so often born out of the exact baggage the text mentions.
The trauma and the chronic stress.
Exactly. The unresolved trauma, the family dynamics you've been carrying for years and years. When you are just reacting, the environment is completely controlling you.
You are basically operating on autopilot, even when autopilot is flying you directly into a mountain.
Precisely. But responding is an entirely different cognitive process.
Okay, so how does moving from simply reacting to actively responding fundamentally alter a person's trajectory?
Well, responding requires a pause.
A pause. Okay.
Yeah, it requires an assessment of the situation. And most importantly, it requires that toolkit. When you build a toolkit with a professional, you are literally learning how to interrupt the reflex.
So you actually catch yourself in the moment.
Yes. You look at a stressful situation, maybe it's a severe relationship conflict or like a sudden wave of panic at work, and instead of defaulting to that old destructive pattern, you reach into the toolkit.
You choose a deliberate action.
Exactly. You tighten the pipe. You change the outcome in real time.
It really is the difference between having a diary and having a strategist.
Yeah, very well put.
And looking at the phrasing in their service overview, they specifically mention dealing with things you've been carrying for years.
The heavy stuff.
Right. And that points to a reality I think a lot of people just ignore. Unaddressed mental health issues, they aren't just this heavy emotional backpack you take off at the end of the day.
No, they're always there.
They act like background applications on a smartphone, just constantly eating up your battery and your processing power.
Until you barely have enough energy to just get through a normal Tuesday.
Exactly.
And the thing is, many people do not even realize they are running those background applications.
They just think they're naturally exhausted all the time.
Right. They just assume life is inherently that draining. But sitting down with a professional to actively identify and close those hidden programs, it completely shifts the burden.
From something you just have to endure.
To something you can actually dismantle, yes.
But, oh, okay, knowing you need to fix the pipe or close the apps is completely useless if you cannot actually get access to a professional to help you do it.
Right, the logistics.
Which brings us to a massive logistical hurdle. How do you actually get into the room to do this work?
This is where their model is really fascinating.
Yeah, looking at the operational data we have for CHC, their delivery model is strictly telehealth.
100% digital.
Right. They offer secure, IPA-compliant video sessions,
Hey.
and they serve all 159 counties in the state of Georgia.
Covering all 159 counties is a structural choice that directly addresses the geographic lottery of healthcare.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if you've ever tried to book a specialized medical appointment, you know exactly what that lottery is.
Oh, absolutely. It is a nightmare.
If you live in a dense, affluent urban center, you might have like dozens of clinics within a 10-mile radius.
You have options.
Right. But Georgia has a massive rural footprint. So does being strictly telehealth across 159 counties completely erase the geographic lottery of mental health care? If you live in a rural county with no local clinics, does this screen suddenly become your lifeline?
I mean, logically, yes. It takes geography entirely out of the equation.
Which is huge.
It is. But beyond just the physical miles, the strict telehealth model attacks something behavioral psychologists call friction.
Friction. Okay, tell me more about how that applies here.
Well, think about the emotional energy required to process, deep-seated trauma or severe anxiety.
It's exhausting. It's daunting work.
Exactly. And human brains are just naturally wired to avoid difficult, painful tasks.
We want the easy way out.
Always. So if you take that internal resistance and you add external logistical friction like having to leave work early.
Oh, or sitting in an hour of traffic on I-85.
Right. Struggling to find parking, sitting awkwardly in a sterile waiting room. Your brain uses that friction as the absolute perfect excuse to avoid the appointment altogether.
It gives you an easy out. You just say, I really should talk to someone about my panic attacks, but I can't make the drive across town today.
Exactly. And it sounds trivial to blame traffic for not treating your mental health, but that is genuinely how human behavior works. We seek the path of least resistance.
Wow. So by removing the drive entirely.
Right. By offering strictly telehealth, CHC removes the friction of the commute and all those scheduling gymnastics.
You don't have to factor in an extra hour of travel time.
No. The structural revolution here is that the therapy comes to you wherever you are. It eliminates the easiest logistical excuse we have for not taking care of ourselves.
That makes so much sense. And their documentation specifically highlights that these are secure, high-PA compliant sessions.
Which is incredibly important.
Yeah, because it's a term we hear thrown around a lot in medical marketing, but it has real teeth. It means this isn't just like a casual FaceTime call.
No, it's definitely not.
There are strict federal laws and encryption standards in place guaranteeing that your video feed, your data, and your privacy are completely locked down.
Right. Your employer, your family, your internet provider, literally no one has access to that virtual room but you and the therapist.
Which is paramount, especially when you are asking people to be entirely vulnerable about the most difficult, painful parts of their lives.
Absolutely. Without guaranteed privacy, the whole telehealth model just falls apart.
Right. So the digital door is open to the entire state, and the room is totally secure.
Yes.
But I mean, a secure video platform is just the infrastructure. The platform itself isn't the thing analyzing your patterns. The practitioner is.
Exactly. The human element.
So let's look at the actual clinical roster at coping and healing counseling.
This is where we really see the actual depth of the practice.
Yeah. According to the clinic's data, they have a roster of over 15 licensed therapists.
That's a solid team.
It is. And they list a very specific alphabet soup of credentials, LCSWs, LPCs, and LMFTs.
Right. The specific licenses.
And the practice claims to treat this vast spectrum of issues. They offer individual, couples, family, and teen therapy for ages 13 and up, along with life coaching.
It is a very comprehensive list.
Yeah. And their specialty list covers anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, grief, relationships, and stress. But wait, a single practice claiming to treat everything from a 13-year-old school stress to severe adult PTSD.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, with such a massive menu of services, how does a single practice avoid being a jack of our trades, but a master of none?
That is completely fair. This raises an important question, right? Because if one single therapist put up a website claiming they were an expert in adolescent development, severe adult trauma, and couples mediation,
You'd run the other way.
you should absolutely be skeptical. The scope is just too wide for one brain to master.
Right.
But that is exactly why looking at the clinical data here is so crucial. They are not relying on one practitioner. They have a whole network of over 15 professionals, and they hold different, highly specialized licenses.
Those acronyms we mentioned.
Yes,
Wow.
those acronyms LMFT, LCSW, LPC, they aren't just letters.
Right.
They represent fundamentally different clinical training paths.
Okay, we definitely need to define those for anyone who hasn't navigated the mental health system before. Because to a patient, a therapist is just a therapist.
Exactly, but they're very distinct disciplines.
Let's break down the LPC first.
Okay, so an LPC is a licensed professional counselor.
Got it.
Their clinical training focuses heavily on individual mental health, cognitive behavioral therapies, and day-to-day behavioral modification.
So more of the daily coping mechanisms.
Right. If you are struggling with daily anxiety, depression, or stress management, an LPC is trained specifically to help you build out those individual coping mechanisms we talked about earlier.
So they are focused on the individual's internal operating system, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about an LMFT?
An LMFT is a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
Their entire educational framework is built around relationship dynamics and family systems. So they don't just look at the individual in a vacuum.
They look at the connections.
Yes, they look at how people interact with one another. If a family is fractured or a couple is in crisis, an LMFT is the specialist who understands that complex web of communication and behavioral loops between multiple people.
That makes total sense.
Hmm.
And finally, the LCSW, licensed clinical social worker.
Right. And LCSW often has a deep, deep background in navigating complex systemic issues.
Like what kind of issues?
Well, they are highly trained in understanding how a patient's environment, like social factors, economic stress, the lack of community resources, impacts their psychological well-being.
Ah, so the external pressures.
Exactly. They are frequently the specialists who handle severe, complex trauma, PTSD, or cases that really require a broad understanding of both the psychological and the environmental barriers a person is facing.
Wow. So by building a roster of 15-plus therapists with this specific mix of licenses, CHC isn't just trying to be a jack of all trades.
No, they are building a multidisciplinary clinic.
Right. If you come in for couples counseling, you aren't seeing an LPC who mainly works with teens.
Exactly. You are routed to an LMFT whose entire career is focused specifically on relationship dynamics.
That distinction is so important.
It is. And this ties directly into another key phrase in their documentation. The team is explicitly described as diverse and culturally competent.
Which, I mean, again, can sound like just corporate jargon if you don't really understand the clinical application.
Right. People see cultural competence and think it's just an HR buzzword.
Totally.
But in mental health, cultural competence is actually a measurable, vital clinical tool.
No, so?
The lens through which you view the world, your racial background, your religious upbringing, your gender identity, your socioeconomic history, it deeply, deeply impacts how you process trauma and stress.
Because your experiences are totally different.
Yes. If a patient sits down with a therapist who has zero understanding of their cultural background, that patient has to spend like the first 5 sessions just explaining their mere existence.
Oh, wow.
Rather than actually doing the hard work.
You're spending all your time translating your life instead of treating it.
Exactly. It's exhausting. Cultural competence and true diversity within the clinical team mean that a patient is far more likely to be matched with a professional who already understands their baseline reality.
Which has to speed up the process.
It builds trust exponentially faster.
Yeah.
And trust is the absolute foundation of the therapeutic toolkit. You need the right therapist for your specific background, not just the first available open slot on a calendar.
Okay, so we've mapped out the philosophy of the toolkit, the removal of geographic friction through telehealth, and the highly specialized, diverse nature of their clinical roster.
Yes.
But we have to address the elephant in the room, The final and honestly often the most impenetrable wall between a person and mental health care.
The financial barrier.
The financial blueprint, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's look at the billing guidelines in our sources because CHC has made some very specific structural choices here that really stand out.
they really have.
For Medicaid patients, the documentation clearly lists a $0 copay.
Which is massive.
And for patients with major insurance plans,
Yeah.
and they explicitly list Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Humana sessions run between $10 and $40.
Right.
So what does this all mean in the broader landscape of healthcare right now? Because if you look at the industry standard today, finding a specialist who actually takes insurance is incredibly difficult.
It is almost impossible in some areas. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is just vital to understand the systemic context here. Many private therapy practices do not accept insurance at all anymore.
Oh, really? None at all?
None. The administrative red tape, the notoriously delayed payouts from insurers, and the sheer volume of paperwork required by these companies prompt a lot of therapists to only accept out-of-pocket private pay.
They use that super bill system, right?
Yes, exactly. The super bill. You pay, $150 or $200 up front for your session.
Right.
They hand you a receipt, and then it's on you to go fight with your insurance company to hopefully get a fraction of that reimbursed months later.
Which is just wild.
Yeah.
Because that turns mental health care into this absolute luxury good.
Yes. It reserves the service only for people who have hundreds of dollars of disposable income to just front every single week.
Which is not most people.
No. So by making the infrastructural choice to process major insurance like Aetna, Cigna, and BCBS directly, CHC is absorbing that massive administrative burden themselves.
They take on the headache.
Right. They are actively protecting the patient from that upfront cost.
And looking at these numbers, I mean, a $10 to $40 copay is roughly the cost of, what, a couple of streaming subscriptions.
Or a few cups of premium coffee, really.
Right. And for Medicaid patients, it is literally nothing. The $0 copay is spelled out in black and white in the data.
There is a profound clinical relief that comes with this level of financial transparency, too.
Clinical relief. How does the billing affect the clinical side?
Well, think about the specialties we listed earlier: stress, anxiety, depression.
Okay.
What is consistently ranked as one of the primary drivers of anxiety and depression in modern society?
Oh, financial stress.
Exactly.
The cost of living, medical debt, just making rent.
It is the cruelest irony of the entire mental health system. The financial burden of seeking help for your anxiety often ends up exacerbating the exact anxiety you're trying to treat.
Oh, man, that is so true.
Right. If you are sitting in a session trying to be vulnerable, but the entire time your brain is doing mental math about how you're going to pay the $200 bill at the end of the hour,
You aren't even really there.
you are not actually present. You
Right.
absolutely cannot build the toolkit.
Your brain is too busy panicking about the cost to do any of the deep work.
Exactly. So by clearly stating a $0 Medicaid option and capping those major insurance copays at $40, CHC structurally neutralizes that secondary anxiety.
They take it right off the table.
Right. When you know up front exactly what the financial commitment is and you know that it is manageable, it removes the final point of friction. It takes all the mystery and the dread right out of the billing process.
It transforms mental health care from this, unpredictable luxury into an accessible utility.
A utility, yes.
And when we zoom out and look at all of these sources together, you just see a really cohesive strategy at play here.
Absolutely.
Coping and healing counseling isn't just offering a service. They have basically engineered a system to systematically eliminate all the traditional excuses we use to avoid therapy.
They have addressed the philosophical, the logistical, the clinical, and the financial barriers, all of them.
Let's quickly recap the entire picture here for the listener.
Good idea.
We started with the skepticism that therapy is just paying someone to listen to you complain. But what the documentation reveals is a practice built on active, specialized work.
The toolkit.
Exactly. They are offering a network that spans all 159 Georgia counties. They're delivering it through a 100% telehealth platform that is fully HIPAA compliant.
Completely removing the friction of geography and those awful commutes.
Right. And they have built a roster of over 15 culturally competent professionals, LMFTs for family systems, LCSWs for complex trauma, and LPCs for individual behavioral work.
Ensuring you get a specialized developer for your specific code.
Exactly. And on top of all that, they have made it financially transparent. They are taking on the administrative burden of those major insurers to offer $10 to $40 copays and a $0 option for Medicaid.
They are handing you the wrench and actually teaching you how to fix the plumbing.
It is just a remarkably comprehensive ecosystem.
The infrastructure is really designed so that the only thing the patient has to focus on is the actual internal work.
So if you've been listening to this breakdown and, maybe recognizing your own patterns,
We all have them.
right. If you are tired of operating on a glitchy autopilot and you want to explore what building this toolkit looks like for your specific situation, the intake pathways provided in the notes are very straightforward.
Very easy to access.
You can review their team and their specialties online by visiting chctherapy.com. You can also reach out to their intake coordinators directly via email at support@chctherapy.com.
Or just give them a call.
Yep, you can speak to them directly by calling 404-832-0102.
Excellent.
Again, the website is chctherapy.com, and the phone number is 404-832-0102.
Well, as we close out this deep dive today, I want you, the listener, to just consider the psychology of the reflexes we discussed earlier.
Those automatic reactions.
Exactly. Think about the one pattern in your life you find yourself repeating the most. The one automatic reaction you consistently wish you could take back.
Oh, that's a tough one to think about.
It is. But if you possess the right toolkit today, how would you respond to that exact same trigger tomorrow?